Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is day 132, Friday, and it is the 13th, but that's okay because I'm not superstitious. I have no black cats, I'm not standing under a ladder, and I don't have any superstitions anyway, so we're all good. Happy Friday everyone, day 132. Well, I'm sure that you all have been following the news, just like myself and many other people who are following the craziness that's going on, and I guess we all know what the everybody's still talking about, the Donald Jr. thing, so we're going to kind of stay with that, although I do have some information on the Ukrainian thing I wanted to get to today, but it looks like I may do that on Saturday evening. So for today's video we're going to stay with the topic because we do have some new information out. Now before I get started on that, I just want to give a big shout out to our good friend Mara. Thank you so much, Mara, for putting yourself through watching 3 hours of CNN. I certainly couldn't have done that. I usually read the transcripts, but the fact that you put yourself through that for all of us, we really appreciate that. You are a jewel. And thank you also for posting up that nice background piece on Mr. Goldstone. I'm sure we're going to be learning a lot more about Mr. Goldstone in the future. Something in my gut tells me that Mr. Goldstone knows Christopher Steele. I don't know that. It's just a gut feeling I have. He might be somewhat associated with Fusion GPS. Again, it's just a gut thing. And something, I keep wanting to feel that there's this connection also, that he may have some connection to John McCain. McCain, Christopher Steele, Fusion. There's just something going on there. I just don't know what it is yet, but I'm sure that eventually it'll all come out. So we're following Mr. Goldstone very closely, but right now the focus seems to be on the female Russian lawyer, Natalia, and what we're learning about her. And I'm sure most of you are familiar with the new revelations, which we'll get to in just a moment. Let's see. Well, I tried to call Trey Gowdy this morning. I get up pretty early, and I guess I'm up too early for Trey Gowdy and his staff there at his office, because when I called, I got put through to voicemail. I don't like leaving questions and things like that on voicemail, so I'll try back another day. Maybe I'll call on my break from work. It's a little later in the morning by then, and maybe they're up out of bed. My guess is they don't like working early in the morning there, because I called about, I guess it was about 10 till 8. Now it was about 20 till 8. Yeah, it was about 20 till 8 when I tried to call Trey Gowdy, and I got the voicemail. Okay, another thing I want to comment on, oh, by the way, before I do, just so you know, in the last 72 hours, looking at the ratings for the evening primetime ratings on cable news, it looks like Yogi and Boo Boo beat CNN again, and this time, oh my goodness, Yogi and Boo Boo got over 4 million viewers. CNN got 894,000. So Yogi Bear and Boo Boo are getting 4 times the viewers of CNN. What do you think about that, Boo Boo? I mean, that's just absolutely disgraceful. I mean, that's just absolutely disgraceful. It's humorous. Man, oh man. Keep doing what you're doing, CNN. Okay, something else I want to comment on. I keep watching these pundits come on and talk about the fact that, well, they never find, Trump with a crime. They keep playing up all this stuff, but there's never any crime. With Don Jr. Meeting with his lawyer, it's not a crime. All these things are not crimes. Of course they're not crimes. The Democrats and the deep state and the Republicans that are part of the deep state know that there's no crimes. That's not what this has anything at all to do with. It's not about finding Trump guilty of any crimes. It's not about finding Don Jr. or Paul Manafort or Roger Stone or any of these people. Not about finding these people committing crimes. It's about this narrative. It's about an attempt at a deep state coup. That's what it's about. And as many of these pundits well know, you do not need for the president to be convicted or even charged with the crime to impeach him. The president can be impeached for many reasons. There doesn't have to be a crime. There doesn't have to be the charge of a crime or anything else like a crime. There are many reasons you can impeach a president, and there are several different ways to do it. Now, it would be highly unlikely that they could actually get the votes to do it, because you would need 2/3 majority in the House and the Senate, and I doubt that they would get that. Any Republicans who voted for that would probably find themselves getting tossed out of office pretty quickly, and so it's political suicide. But none of that is the issue. The issue is to keep this in the news cycle day after day after day. This is what the Democrats are doing on their behalf of this particular operation to orchestrate a coup. And what the Republicans are doing is they have a very much more delicate situation because the president is a man of their party, and a lot of their constituents voted for him and support his agenda. So therefore, what they must do is play a shadier, more covert deal. And what they are doing is simply assisting the Democrats by not doing anything to stop them, letting them have all their hearings, never really having any hearings for any of the people who actually committed crimes, such as Comey and Jarrett and all these other people. But most importantly, what they're doing on the Republican side is to deprive Donald Trump of any legislative victories. Everything that Donald Trump has done to move us forward has been done through executive order. The Congress has not been able to do anything, and this is no accident. They want to be seen as having a failed legislative agenda because they believe it will backfire or will reflect badly on the president. But what they are learning as they look at the polls is that President Trump is not the one who's taking the hit for this lack of success that they're having in Congress to get the president's agenda passed. They haven't been able to do anything with the health care. They haven't been able to do anything on his budget, on the wall, none of these other things. They're all being done other ways. The wall came from funding appropriated to the Department of Homeland Security, not through the Congress. They have no clue where to even begin on a budget. They can't agree on a tax plan. They can't agree on a health insurance reform plan. They can't even all agree to repeal. And all this is being done on purpose, to have a failed legislative agenda, hoping it reflects badly on the president. What they want in this deep state coup is to keep applying the pressure day after day, hour after hour, about all this Russia collusion and all this other stuff. Then they want to have a failed legislative agenda, and at some point they just want to begin to pressure Trump and say, hey, this just isn't working out, we're not getting anything done, this is all bad. What would be really good for the country is if you would just step down, because the deep state would like Mike Pence. I can assure you that Mr. McConnell, I can assure you that Paul Ryan, and 98% of the Republicans in the Congress, this is what they're hoping for, to get rid of Trump. They are cooperating and doing their part. Keep this in mind when you're voting in 2018. Do not forget. But it is backfiring on them, and now they are feeling the pressure, and now they're being forced to maybe move on some of these legislative ideas, but they're still going to fight Trump every bit of the way. So this is exactly what's going on, and this is why I say that these pundits who keep focusing on whether or not there was a crime, not a crime, a crime. Of course there's no damn crimes. Don't you people understand what's going on? It's a deep state coup. The issue is not to find him guilty of a crime. The issue is simply to continue this false narrative and beat him up every single day until he eventually just decides he can't take it anymore and he quits, or else you get enough members who go to him and say, yeah, well, the country no longer has confidence in you, your polls are down to 20%, we can't get anything done, the best thing for the country would be if you step down. This is exactly what's going on. They're trying to get Trump. They know they can't convict him of crimes because they know he hasn't committed any. They know there's no crimes about any of this. It's simply a way for the deep state to defeat Donald Trump. They couldn't defeat him in the election, so now they're going to try to run him out of office. This is a coup by the deep state. It has nothing to do with crimes. You do not need crimes to impeach the president. You do not need crimes to force him to step down. You just have to beat him to death day after day after day until he gets sick of it, or until the country gets sick of it. That's the plan. That's the deep state coup. Now, something else about these investigations. You do not have to be a genius to figure out how this works. Most of the members of Congress were lawyers, prosecutors. These guys know exactly what's going on. This shows you how horribly corrupt they are. Because let's look at how a normal investigation works. In a normal investigation, someone does something which catches the eye of someone in law enforcement. They take a look at it and decide if there is reasonable suspicion or probable cause that a crime has been committed. If that decision is yes, we believe there may be a crime here, then they begin digging into evidence. And as they go through the evidence, they allow the evidence to lead them to some final conclusion. But that's not what we see going on here, is it? We've been watching for the past 8 months. And what is this particular cycle looking like when you take a long view? Well, what you have is, number one, this narrative, which began about 8 months ago, the Putin-Trump, Russia-Trump collusion narrative, day after day after day. And then once the narrative is out there, then they begin to leak information which becomes the evidence which supports the narrative that they created. The narrative, or the conclusion, comes first, and then the evidence drips out bit by bit by bit, day after day after day, as it plays out. This is exactly the reverse of how things work. Any prosecutor, any lawyer worth his salt would be able to look at this process and see exactly what has been going on. It starts with a narrative, then it's followed up with these leaks after leaks after leaks that support the narrative. And when you look into these events, it looks like many of these things were setups. The most recent event with Trump Jr. and the Russian lawyer, Natalia, is obviously a setup. You don't have to be a genius to figure this out. So, that's how you know that the deep state is operating on a plan to orchestrate a coup. That's how you know that 98% of the Republicans are on board with it and participating in it, as well as, of course, all the Democrats. They are wanting to get Mike Pence to be the president and have Donald Trump just go away and throw up his hands and give up. Hopefully he does not do that. Now, let's get to the day's real news events. In October 2016, let's see. In October 2016, the government bypassed the normal visa process and gave a type of extraordinary permission to the Russian female lawyer Natalia to enter the country. It's called immigration parole. And it appears from multiple reports, from The Hill to the New York Times and all over the internet as well, that this approval was made by the head of the Justice Department, and that would be none other than Loretta Lynch. Loretta Lynch. Under the Obama administration. Not only that, but once they did this, what's been described as extraordinary circumstance that rarely ever happens, by granting this person this special permission, they didn't actually approve her visa. She still was working with a non-approved visa, wasn't able to get a visa, but they went around that to do this extraordinary thing called immigration parole, which is rarely ever used, according to a senior former State Department or Justice Department official who appeared on Fox News this morning. He says it's extraordinary, very, very, very rare that this would happen. Not only that, but after granting her this, she, of course, has her meeting with Donald Trump Jr. How convenient. And then about 5 days after that hearing that she attends, where she was the special guest of Obama's Russian ambassador, where she sat right in the front row, which you got to have a very VIP pass to get that seat, they lost track of her. They completely lost track of her. And why was she not approved for a visa in the first place? Because she was suspected of being a Russian spy. Then, after losing track of her, suddenly the NSA apparently picks up on her because of the various emails that she's sending. And the headers on the emails, of course, come up in various word searches at the NSA, and they were flagged. So the NSA reacquires the Russian lawyer, Miss Natalia, after the Obama administration's Department of Justice and Loretta Lynch lost track of her after granting her this special privilege. Very, very fishy. Very fishy. And we're going to learn a lot more, believe me. We are going to learn a lot more. We know that she has worked with Fusion GPS. Both she's worked with them. She's also used them, hired them. She's acted. They've acted as her client. So she has a bit of a past with Fusion GPS. We know that she was in a photograph in John McCain's office. Clearly, she got some special permission from Loretta Lynch. Now, you do not get this type of a special privilege for nothing. You have to know somebody. You have to know somebody. There has to be some reason why they would do this, why the Obama administration, why Loretta Lynch would grant this special privilege to someone suspected of being a Russian spy. Now, she didn't just meet with Donald Trump Jr. either, because one of the things that she was doing here was she was lobbying against this Majinsky Act, because she was representing a Russian client who had had his assets seized. Not only that, the Russian government was deprived of about $200 and some odd million of taxes, which he would have had to pay on that money that was confiscated by the government. She was working on behalf of her client, this Russian businessman, to get his money back. And in doing so, she lobbied personally in the offices of over 200 members of Congress. We can assume there were a lot of Democrats. Yet now, the Democrats, like Mr. Schiff, want to pretend that she's some spooky Russian agent who is trying to collude with Trump to deprive Hillary of the presidency. When in fact it turns out, Mr. Schiff, that your Democratic president, your Democratic Attorney General, gave her the special privilege to enter the country. Then, Mr. Schiff, she visited the offices of over 200 members of Congress to lobby for you folks to vote against or repeal or overturn the Majinsky Act. I wonder, Mr. Schiff, did she come to your office? Did she lobby you, Mr. Schiff, to vote to overturn the Majinsky Act so that her Russian client could get his money back? That's a very good question for you, Mr. Schiff. I wonder if she visited the offices of John McCain. I wonder who else she visited with. I wonder how she came to know Mr. Goldstone. She is running around with all these people, including Fusion GPS. How did Mr. Goldman come into contact with this female Russian lawyer? I don't see how their paths would have naturally crossed. They're in completely different lines of work. He's a PR guy. Hangs out with a lot of pop stars and movie stars, and he's into all that kind of high-profile stuff. This woman here appears to be a lawyer who represents Russians. We don't know what her connections are to the Russian deep state, to Putin or anyone else. That's not clear at this point, but it appears from her Facebook page that she didn't like Mr. Putin very much. We know she didn't like Donald Trump because her Facebook is full of anti-Trump and anti-Putin posts, as well as even a picture of her at an anti-Trump rally. A lot of questions to be answered here. And of course, this just brings up more questions for Loretta Lynch to answer. Some new questions for Loretta Lynch. Now, Loretta Lynch didn't waste any time whatsoever for her professional PR spokesman, which you got to ask yourself, she's no longer a member of the government. Why does she need a professional PR spokesman? We never hear from Loretta Lynch. We only hear from her professional PR spokesman, who says that Loretta Lynch doesn't know this woman, doesn't know anything about her or her travels. Sure. You don't know anything about this woman. You don't know anything about her travels. But yet you ruled to let her bypass the fact that she was not allowed to have a visa to enter the country because she was suspected of being a Russian spy. And despite the fact that you know nothing about her travels, Mrs. Lynch, you go ahead and grant her an extraordinary privilege. Immigration parole. Rarely ever is that granted to anyone. Yet Loretta Lynch wants us to believe that she granted this special and rare, unique privilege to the Russian lawyer Natalia, despite the fact that she doesn't know anything about her or about her travels. I'm not buying it. How about you? Another thing, timing. Kind of interesting, the timing when all this happens. It appears that this all happened not too long after the meeting on the plane with Bill Clinton. Is it possible that maybe one of the things that Bill Clinton discussed with Loretta Lynch on that plane, on the tarmac, was maybe that he should allow this Russian lawyer to enter into the country so that she could carry out the op that they had set up, working with their friends at Fusion GPS and Hillary and the DNC, Christopher Steele and John McCain, and some more of their friends, including the Obamas, Valerie Jarrett, and of course, Loretta Lynch. My. It's not a far stretch to tie these things together, is it? I don't think so. I do not think so. By the way, this story that's I'm referring to is from The Hill. Okay? The Hill is a fairly left-wing publication. No friends of Trump. No friends of Trump. And they're the ones that are reporting about this extraordinary permission granted to this female Russian lawyer, Natalia, who was prevented from entering the country, prevented from getting a visa because they suspected she was a spy. Yet Loretta Lynch is going to go ahead and grant her the special permission, even though she doesn't know her, doesn't know anything about her, doesn't know about her travels. Something doesn't make sense. Somebody's lying. Something's can't be correct here. You can't sit there and say, yeah, I'm the Attorney General, and I went ahead and granted this super special permission to this person suspected of being a Russian spy. I didn't really know anything about her, didn't know anything about her travels, don't know anything about what she's into. I just thought, what the hell. I think it's a nice sunny day. We're having tea and crumpets with the president. I'm going to be meeting with the former president on the tarmac as I try to help Hillary win the election. We'll do a little colluding. What the hell? I think I'll go ahead and grant a special permission to a suspected Russian spy for the hell of it. I don't think so. Something tells me that conversation on the tarmac may have been, I expect they talked for almost 40 minutes. I expect Bill covered several issues with Loretta Lynch. And I suspect this may be one of the issues that they covered. He may have said, hey, there's this woman. She's a Russian lawyer. We've got this op set up, which will pay out dividends for us down the road. We're going to set up Trump. Well, my guess is they were unsuccessful at setting up the president, so they did the next best thing. They got to his son. What we now need to try to figure out, and what I'll be working on, okay, we've now seen the connection between this Russian lawyer. Now we have a connection to the Obama administration, his ambassador to Russia, Fusion GPS, which means probably Christopher Steele as well, probably John McCain in the mix, Loretta Lynch, the whole 9 yards. Now we need to find what the connection is. How did Mr. Goldstone get so friendly with this Russian lawyer? How did their paths cross? How did they meet? When did they become friends or associates or acquaintances? I mean, because for him to set this meeting up, and to set this meeting up with Don Jr. and her, he had to be more than just some guy who got her number at some point through a casual meeting at a cocktail party, and so he calls her up one day and says, hey, how would you like to do this or this? No, I mean, they have to be much closer than just, incidental, contact through meeting at a party or something like that. They have to be much closer than that. And if she is connected to all these people, then who's Mr. Goldstone connected to? How would he be put in contact with her? Is it possible that because she is an operative working along with Fusion GPS, and they're opt to try to take down Trump, and they have her available, that they contact Christopher Steele, and maybe they need a way to get to Trump or his son. And so they do a little digging around, and they determine that Mr. Goldstone is a man who would probably be able to help them. And so they contact Mr. Goldstone, and that would have been someone from Fusion GPS, but most likely Christopher Steele, because they both reside in the UK. Is it possible that that's how he got drawn into this thing? There has to be some way. We have to make the connection between Goldstone, because he set up the meeting with her and Trump Jr. How did Mr. Goldstone become acquainted with, friends with, or associated with this Russian female lawyer? Who put Mr. Goldstone up to making that phone call? Who put Mr. Goldstein up to setting up that meeting, and why? Why would this Russian lawyer, and what did Mr. Goldstein tell this Russian lawyer that the reason she was going to be there? She thought she was there to talk about this adoption situation between Russia and the U.S., about this Majinsky Act, things and such. She acted as if she didn't even know that she was there to talk about having dirt on Hillary. Clearly this was a setup. The only intent, the only purpose of the meeting was to be able to say that Donald Trump Jr. and Manafort and someone else met with this woman. And as the question I asked yesterday, which is extremely important, is the question is, was this meeting between Trump Jr., the Russian lawyer, Manafort, and Kushner, was this meeting the reason that was given for the FISA warrant? If this is the reason that they got the FISA warrant, which Loretta Lynch and James Comey would have been involved in, then this tells you that they're either in on the plot or they're incredibly stupid and naive. And I'll tell you, Comey and Lynch are not incredibly stupid or naive, which only leaves one option. They're part of the deep state plot for a coup d'etat of Donald Trump. That's what I believe we are looking at here, my friends. That's what I believe we're looking at. As I said, I don't believe that we'll get to the truth relying on people like in the Congress, such as the Pitbull, Mr. Gowdy, Mr. Mueller, probably not even the new FBI director, certainly not Jeff Sessions. He's busy doing crossword puzzles and I don't know, whatever he does. But this is likely going to be solved and resolved the exact same way that Watergate was. It's not going to happen because a lot of people, politicians in the Congress, want to do the right thing because they're actually all part of the great plot that's exploding right in front of their face. That they're all part of. And this is all going to be blown up. If it is blown up, it'll be because of a private citizen whistleblower coming out or multiple whistleblowers who are feeling the pressure, or because of the great work done by some journalists, maybe Mr. Hoff, maybe Sarah Carter at Circuit News, maybe our good friend Tyler Durden over there at Zero Hedge. And of course, yes, I know that's not his real name. That's a name Brad Pitt used in a movie. But in Fight Club, if you've never seen Fight Club with Norton and Brad Pitt, it's a pretty cool movie. Pretty cool movie. And that's where the name came from, that Tyler Durden, that is used by the guy who publishes on the Zero Hedge. Okay, so that is what we have. It is TowerGate, day 132, Friday the 13th. So I want to wish you all a happy Friday. Keeping the video kind of short tonight because I know it's Friday night and we all probably want to do something else. We probably had enough of this story for this week. I'm sure Friday at 5 o'clock p.m. after the workday ends is when usually the really good stuff is leaked or comes out. So I'll be following that very closely over the weekend. On Saturday, I'll be focusing on the Ukrainian issue with the Democrats. I was going to do that today, but we had more information on this, so I covered this instead. But thank you again for all those of you who are participating in this discussion. in this investigation. I appreciate all the work that you're doing, especially Maura, taking the time to post that up in the comment section. That was awfully sweet of you. And all of you who just love reading the comments. I mean, I don't have a lot of subscribers and things like that, but the people I do have that are following my channel and staying and following the story, some very, very bright individuals, some very smart, some very intelligent people, some very good people, I assume. I'm sure they are. And I do appreciate y'all taking part in this discussion, following the videos every day. And we'll all continue to follow it, and we'll all continue to work. And hopefully we will see justice prevail at the end. And if that happens, it will come because of journalists, maybe whistleblowers. It will not come from the deep state. They are in the process right now of orchestrating a coup. But we're going to try everything we can do to make sure that does not happen. We'll keep working on this and keep following this. And it is pretty interesting, you have to admit. It's better than reality TV, and it's certainly better than anything on CNN, which is fake news. Ain't that right, boo-boo? Getting beat by a 1960s animated cartoon by 4 times. Yogi Bear is getting 4 times the viewership of CNN. They can't even get 1 million views. Holy smoke. In a way, I hope Mr. Zucker continues functioning there as CNN. In a way, I don't want to see Mr. Zucker go. Anyway, thank you so much for tuning in this evening. And this has been TowerGate Day 132. I'll see you with my late Saturday evening video. In the meantime, you guys go out and have some fun. Check out your friends. Hang out with your boyfriend or girlfriend or wife or husband or whatever. Hang out with the kids. Let this stuff go for a day or two. I'll keep following it. And we'll see you back here Saturday night. You guys have a good night. Thanks for tuning in. Bye.